Hey everybody, Brittany here, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be playing against D3, and I'm going to count this as a Semi-Slav. I'm going to count this as a Semi-Slav, so I'm going to play D5 and C6. Generally against anything that's not E4, I'm just going to count as like a Semi-Slav repertoire, because I feel like D4 is just less common, so you can kind of play Semi-Slav against anything, honestly. Here, I think what we want to do is we want to take, and then we want to take on D1. I think we're quite happy about this. Okay, so they end up taking, or playing Queen A4 check, Knight D7. And then they take. So, yeah, we're just going to focus on our development. Play natural moves, E6, C6. Knight B6 would be nice to get in at some point. We're not really in a rush, though. But it probably will be played soon. So with this, they did waste some time in the opening. So we can kind of bank on that and try to claim some sort of advantage or equality because of it. Because it did take them some time. So I'll just castle. So they're going for a Catalan setup. And I think that's actually very, very, very smart of them. Because the idea of the Catalan here is they're trying to argue that this bishop is bad. Right? And when the bishop here on c8 didn't really get to a good square, that can be a problem sometimes. So I'm going to play a6. And this is threatening to immediately become, I believe, even slightly better after the move b5. So what they want to do is they want to avoid b5 with tempo. And they can do this with queen c2. Knight to d2 does not do that, though, because now I get b5 in. And after I get b5, things become a lot easier for me. A lot easier. Because now their queen's hit, I can get bishop b7 and c5 in. I get a good control over the queen side. These are all still Semi-Slav principles, despite them not playing d4. So this is actually a very good lesson for those that play the Semi-Slav. So I'm happy we got into this game anyways. If they went queen to c6, we just go rook to b8, and then bishop to b7. So here, bishop to b7 looks quite good. And now we've neutralized the long diagonal, which I believe we can consider a successful equality. Yeah, so c5, rook to c8 feels like a good move next. Even h6, questioning where the bishop will go. I think there's a few moves here that are quite good. Knight e5 is always one of those annoying moves to watch out for. For example, if we played b6 here, knight e5, right? If we take here, they get to take on a8. So that's why this a6 move is quite good, because we want to go a6, b5, and c5, because it's a more active option anyways. So let's go h6. Ask this bishop where it's going to go. And now I can go knight to d5. Knight to d5 allows... It does not allow knight e5. They could go backwards, but that's kind of sad. Like, if they go knight to e1, then is that really an improvement? I'm not really sure it is. So I'm going to go knight to d5. And we can always defend the bishop here with something like queen to b6. And then we're threatening knight to e3. So yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. Is if knight e1, I'm going to play queen to b6, defending b7, and then threatening to take on e3. Getting the bishop here would be very nice, especially when the center is quite fluid, as in it's not really locked up. There are central pawns, though. Yeah, so here, this doesn't actually work. And the reason why is because, well, there's not an exploitation of this long diagonal. We can actually just take on e5 here, and it's unclear what their follow-up is. Yeah, so of course I'm going to take with the queen. Threaten mate. Doesn't look like a bad idea by any means. They should probably move the knight. Knight f3, we can take it, and then queen takes, and it looks like an unstoppable checkmate. If knight e4, then we had f5, and it kind of looks like the same story. So, yeah, it's quite difficult to stop queen g2. If you can stop it, you're a better player than me. But I don't see a response. So, looks like it's good. Okay. Good to know. Good to know. And I think they might be thinking still. Yeah. Bishop h6. Actually, I respect it, right? They're trying to complicate things. Like, if, you know, your opponent has a simple mate, you never know. Maybe I just, like, focus on taking the bishop or something. So, yeah, they end up resigning after that, which I also understand, too. So, let's look at it in analysis, shall we? So, yeah, I consider this to be a Semi-Slav because we did use the principles of the Semi-Slav in this opening. So we're going to look at it as one. And I think that's actually the right call. So queen a4 check. If I put on the evaluation, you might be shocked by this, or you might not be. But yeah, black is doing quite well. And the reason why we're doing quite well is, well, because they're wasting a lot of time here. So after knight d7, which might not even be best, because this can transpose into like some sort of Catalan, kind of like the game. We entered this position here, where I'm just getting more developed faster than them, and they're also having to be worried about some sort of a6 b5. So knight f3, e6, bishop g5, bishop e7. And again, this move was very, very clever on their part. I think that was actually the right call. We're after castles and bishop g2. If I go b6 here, I might run into some problems. For example, if knight to e5, it looks like there's actually knight takes e5. Interesting. Oh, because their queen's hit. Yeah, I'm just going to chalk that up to me being rusty. So, funnily enough, okay, so knight d4 then, let's say. So b6, knight to d4 is probably the better option. Yeah. And now we have to find knight to e5 in order to cover c6, where once they move away, let's just say queen c1, then we have rook b8, and we're covering c6 just for long enough to play bishop b7 at the end of the day. So we're not really worried about activating this bishop, but that's very specific and kind of strange. I think a6 is the more natural way to play, where they kind of should play queen c2, and they're almost forced into it. Because if they don't, after knight to d2, for example, we get b5 in, and bishop to b7, and c5. Like, all three of those moves are quite difficult to stop if you didn't stop the original b5. And now, these pieces are immediately equalized. And that's very good for me, because they weakened the squares around their king to fianchetto, but all of a sudden the fianchetto is no longer as effective. So this is kind of the best way to play against fianchetto setups. Same thing with the dragon, is if your opponent plays some sort of b3, that could be annoying. So b3, h6, and yeah, we have a really nice position. And unfortunately, knight to e5 hangs the piece. So knight to e1 was something I mentioned before, trying to take advantage of the pin, but it doesn't really look like it works. Queen b6 was my first instinct, and it looks like it was a good one, because now we are going to take on e3, and there's not really anything they can do about it, because, well, now we're defending b7, so there's no longer a pin here. And yeah, that seems to be the game. I hope you guys enjoyed that little lesson. Just remember, if your opponent's doing a fianchetto in these d4 or even c4 positions, it's going to be against your bishop on c8. So activate that guy as soon as possible. And in fact, I was quite inaccurate in my opening and probably should have done it sooner because these G3 ideas are very annoying. So props to my opponent for finding this Catalan idea, and darn me for not being as aggressive towards making sure it wasn't as good. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.